A quick run through of everything we're going to cover in this video. For starters, we'll of course start by unboxing the MVR and the cameras and see what all we get inside that box. Once we do that, then we will look at installing one of those cameras just to kind of show you what that might look like. After that, we're going to take a look at the MVR locally and kind of see what that looks like, and we'll see about getting that camera added. Once we get some cameras in there, we will go over the config of the MVR and see what all we can do with it. After that, we're going to see about trying to get it added into Home Assistant and if that's even possible. And then, of course, lastly, I'll just kind of give you my final thoughts. So let's get started. All right, so let's start by unboxing this MVR here. So it comes in a pretty decent sized box. It's actually pretty big, but I guess it needs to be, to hold the MVR and 4 cameras and all the items needed to kind of install it and everything. So I guess that does make somewhat sense. It has a lot of information on the outside of the box as far as like the basic specs and stuff, which is pretty cool. So of course it comes with instructions on how to install it and get everything set up. And then let's see here, in this little bubble wrapped package here is the actual MVR. It's a pretty small form factor, so it's kind of nice. Doesn't take up a lot of space. Here on the back, as you can see, there's 8 ports. These are all PoE for the 8 cameras that it will handle, so 1 port per channel. Then it has the network uplink port there. 2 USB ports. I'm thinking you can like hook a mouse and a keyboard up to it or something like that. It has an audio out, and then it has your standard HDMI or VGA out, depending on how you want to configure the output there. Let's see what else we get in the box. So of course you got the power cord. Looks like a network cord, so that it basically will come with everything that you really need to get this thing set up. It uses a power brick for the power source. There is a mouse in there as well, so that you can kind of control it locally. Since it does come with 4 cameras, there are 4 network cables in here, one for each of those PoE cameras. Looks like they're about 50 to 75 feet. So that should give you plenty of length to get that thing installed around your house, wherever you need to install it. Let's go ahead and open up one of these cameras just to kind of show you what that looks like. All right, so in the box itself, for the camera, you get the, obviously the camera itself. It comes with screws to mount it with, as well as a waterproof jacket for your network cable. To make sure you don't get any moisture in there or anything like that. But that's pretty much it as far as the camera goes. And as you can see, there is no mounting bracket for that camera. It's basically going to screw straight to the wall. All right, so just to kind of go over some of the specs here. All right, so installing the camera, and then here in the next clip, you can see I installed that one right in its place. It was a really easy install. Wasn't a whole lot to it, so I didn't go into a lot of details as far as doing the install. The screws pretty much lined up. Everything was the same. Just a reminder, with this Panoob dome camera, you don't have an actual mounting bracket. You just screw this dome camera straight to the wall, and then it has a little bezel that will go over the top of the screws to kind of hide them. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step, and we'll look at getting it set up in the MVR itself. All right, so as you can see, the MVR is powering up here. There's the Panoob logo there. And I have the new dome camera installed on channel 1, and then on channel 2, I have an actual 2K Panoob bullet cam that I've done a video on recently. And I'll have the link for that up in the corner there in case you want to check out that video. There will be a little bit of an initial setup here. Just kind of going through the little setup wizard since this is the first time we've powered on the NVR. It's going to require me to give it a password. We'll just kind of fast forward through this here. Set up the time zone. I will be using DHCP, so I'm not going to change anything there. And then, of course, here is the QR code if I wanted to download the latest Guard Viewer app. But we'll do that later. As you can see, since I had those two cameras plugged in, they are already showing up. Everything looks good there, so I didn't even have to make any changes. By default, it was able to get those added. So as far as adding the Panoob cameras into the NVR themselves, it went pretty smooth. There was no additional setup required to make that work. So just looking at the two cameras in the system itself, it actually pulled in the model number and everything, so it was able to detect them pretty easily. And of course, you can kind of click on it here, and it just shows you it was added via plug and play, so we didn't have to do any manual configuration there. It is using OnVIF for its protocol, and since it is the default password, it was able to use that to add the cameras and everything, so that's pretty good. Not a whole lot of other information listed there on the screen display, but let's go ahead and move on to the next step, and we'll take a look at the configuration. All right, so we're going to go over the configuration here on the locally on the screen here. So I showed you the cameras there just a second ago, but we'll just kind of go through some of the various settings. There's tons of stuff you can do here on the display, and basically everything that you can do here, you can also do through the web interface as well. So I'm not going to kind of show you over and over again. We'll look at it through here, and then we'll go into some other stuff, but I'm not going to show you everything on both the on-screen display and the web interface since they're so similar. But here, of course, this is where you'll set your encoding for the camera if you need to tweak that, change the resolution or the bit rate or anything like that. You have some various options there if you need to make some different setting changes there. For the time being, I'm going to leave everything the default. On the OSD, the on-screen display, this is where you can change the layout of the clock or the date format. You also have the ability to change the name here, so we'll go up here in the corner. We'll change it from just camera, we'll call it front door. The only downside to doing this on the on-screen display is, of course, you're having to use a little mouse to try to do it. It's so much easier to do most of these things on the web interface, so just kind of keep that in mind. There on the side door camera or channel 2, I already have the name, everything. It pulled that in as I was already using this camera on my other NVR, so it kind of had that information already saved. So we didn't have to do any changes there. If you go over to here to image, you can change the brightness and the contrast and various things to the actual image if you needed to. Again, I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just going to kind of leave it the default. Under privacy mask, if you want to enable it, as you can see, it's disabled by default. You have the ability to do that, and of course, it will mask those areas on the screen for privacy. BCA search, of course, everything is enabled for all the channels by default. The type is set to all. I'm just going to kind of leave that again as the default. Not going to change anything there. On the network settings, I don't have it configured on the network just yet. But I'm going to leave it set to enable DHCP so that whenever I do plug in the network cable, it should automatically pull an IP address. Then here, of course, is where you can set dynamic DNS if you needed to, or set up an email for alerts if you wanted to do that as well. All right, under system settings, there is the device name, which of course is just the model number for this NVR. And this is where we can kind of set up our layout as far as how we want the cameras to be displayed on the screen locally. Again, I'm just going to kind of leave it the default for now, but there are tons of different options there depending on how many cameras you have. connected and how you want those to be laid out. You could choose to have it display the substream first if you're worried about it having some sort of delayed image or the image quality being degraded. You could go to substream. It would be a little bit lower quality image, but you may get a better stream if you're running into issues there. Now, again, I thought we set the time under the wizard, but for some reason it has resulted back to Pacific Standard Time. So we can change that again here to Central. We'll apply it here. Let's see, under holiday schedule, if you had a holiday schedule, you could create one here or add in the different holidays that you wanted it to not be recording and stuff like that. You can do that here. Users, of course, we're just going with the default users for now, but if you wanted to create additional users for other people that may need to access the system or only need access to certain parts of the system, then you can create those types of users here. For security, we do want OnVIF authentication enabled. Everything else, our protection, all that stuff, we're just going to kind of leave it all the default for now. But you can see there's tons of different things that you have the ability to do right here from the on-screen display. Again, we talked about recording a little bit earlier. It is set to record all the time. You can change that if you want it to only be recording as it sees motion or has events that trigger it. You can do that as well. We only have 4 cameras hooked up to it, and we have 2 terabytes of disk storage. So I think, at least for right now, we can just have it record all the time and it'll overwrite as it needs to. Under storage, this is where it talks about the disk drive. As you can see, 2 terabytes. It's got about 1,800 gigs of free space. With the formatted drives, it's not really recording anything just yet since we just started doing it. So for motion detection, you can add in areas that you want it to be watching and monitoring. That way, it will not monitor the whole image. It'll only monitor those areas for motion detection if you wanted it to. Again, I'm going to leave it the default for now. Then you have the ability for tampering detection and human body detection as well. So there are a lot of capabilities with this MVR. So you're definitely going to want to check out all the different things that you can do with it because there's just so many different things that you can play around with. And again, if you didn't get the app downloaded yet, you can use this QR code here to download the app on your phone, which is called Guard Viewer. And of course, then you can set up the camera and MVR, and we'll kind of go over that here in just a second as well. Other than that, that's pretty much everything that you can do on this MVR. So much stuff that we could talk about, but just so many different features there that you really just need to kind of tweak it for however your system is going to be configured and what you're going to be using it for. Here in this section, we're going to talk about the Guard Viewer app. We have it downloaded on my Mac. And of course, we basically just create an account, and then you're going to go here and add in the MVR. So we'll do device management. Then by default, as you can see, it's kind of already found the MVR listed there. We'll select that one. We're going to say add. It's going to ask for that username and password that are associated with that MVR, which we set up here earlier. And then, of course, it should just automatically kind of show right up. Here in the live view, we got just the 2 cameras hooked up right now, but there they are. Both of them look like they're working. Guard viewer or guard station, I think is what it's called. Looks like it's working pretty good. And we can open these cameras up and kind of see them here full screen, and everything looks pretty nice.